No, thank you for recording. I'm so nervous. All righty, so we're going to start. Hmm, 1 second. Oh my goodness. Let's just go to this. All right, so we're here because we desire to reclaim our health. We believe that we have the power to heal ourselves, to heal our bodies. But I think over the last 20, 30, 40 years, we've lost that autonomy that we actually have over our bodies to heal our bodies. Because unfortunately, on the outside, it seems as though everything requires a medication for it to be healed or managed. And this is hopefully an hour for you to realize that there's actually hope and you actually have the power to heal yourself using the right tools. And so, this is a guide to help you understand why we get sick and what you can do about it. And so, why we're so sick today, most of us understand and know that we're surrounded by all kinds of processed foods and, artificial additives and all kinds of toxins. And that is one of the reasons why we're sick. You're absolutely right. But over the last 20 years or so, the situation has gotten even more dire because unfortunately the food is no longer even processed, it's ultra processed. So if it was just processed foods, our grandparents ate some processed food. They ate bread. They ate, some snacks here and there. But when you look at the ingredient list from 30, 40, 50 years ago compared to now, it's a massive difference. The FDA has approved thousands and thousands of chemicals in our foods every year. Our food is just genetically modified. So even when you quote unquote eat healthy, even your fruits and vegetables are not the same fruits and vegetables. I bought apples the other day and it was like 20 pounds. The apple was so big that I'm like, what is this? True apples are truly not that big. And you know that even the apples and the vegetables and the fruits that we're eating are not made from the same soil as they used to be. So the root cause of our being sick isn't a lack of willpower. It's not just genetics or bad luck. It's a mismatch from our modern diet to our body's fundamental biology. So understanding that mismatch is really the first step to healing our bodies. It's not adding more medications. It's not complicating the process. It's really pretty simple. So really the answer is very simple. It does have to do with the way we eat our foods. And we know that food is medicine. We know that food is medicine. That means the opposite can be true as well. Food can be medicine or it can be a poison. Again, our modern food industry, unfortunately, in order for us to eat more, to sell us more food, they've completely changed the entire
Mhm.
the food, the mechanism of the food, they've completely changed it so that it can stay on the shelf for longer. As I mentioned to you, they add preservatives, but they remove something else to our food so that it can stay on the shelf so it doesn't go bad so quickly. And so that is good for their bank account, but it's not good for your body's bank account. And therefore, that is the reason why over time we've gotten sicker, even though our food industry has done multiple things to help us with our health. They've removed fat from food. They try to limit, I mean, really the only thing they've done is really remove the fat from the food, or they market food as being low fat or organic, keto friendly, you name it. But at the end of the day, the food is still processed and our bodies are no longer recognizing what we're eating. So the two key systems that are at the root of our modern disease epidemic that we're experiencing is the two pillars of chronic health is how our body makes energy and how our gut functions. And in medical school, we learn the body through all the different systems. We learn them separately. Very rarely do we ever learn it as one. However, it is one unit. Everything is interconnected. Just like when you go to a forest, every tree looks separate, but if you looked underneath the tree, you'll see an interconnection. It's a whole ecosystem in the forest. So is our bodies. Our bodies are just a microcosm of the forest or of the planet. We're all interconnected within our body systems. And so the two systems that are driving our health epidemic right now is how our body makes energy and how our gut functions. So we're going to go into some of the diseases when this breaks down, what it causes. But first, your cells depend on energy, and
What was that?
energy is based on what your body ate. Okay, our bodies is constantly in flux. Nothing in our body stays the same. There's always building up, there's always breaking down because our bodies are all just like, we're going into spring. We just came from winter. Everything in nature, everything in the world is cyclical. Your body is the same. It's always cycling between making things and breaking things down. But it needs a fuel to do that. It cannot do it from air. And what does it use? It uses our food. So your body is, we're only just reaching the tip of the iceberg of what our bodies can actually do. However, the parts that we do know our bodies can do, we know that our bodies can do so much. It can repair, it can heal, it can create, but it still needs a source, and our source is food. And so when our bodies have an efficient food supply, then it can do what it needs to do in the background without you having to help it at all. However, when that system is disrupted, then you start getting the whispers, which is the fatigue or the brain fog or the joint pain and a little bit of a weight gain. And then, unfortunately, when we ignore the whispers, that's when disease follows. And right now, we are at an epidemic where people are skipping the whispers and going straight to the body, screaming at them because they ignored the root signs. And then the second part that's driving your health is how your gut functions. Most people, they're aware that their gut is important, but they don't really understand how important our gut is. I'm not sure if you understand that the gut, excuse me, I want you to help you understand that our gut is home to almost 100 trillion bacteria. And that amount of bacteria is not anything to sneeze at. It is very, very, very important. Your gut bacteria has been around. The bacteria that we make in our gut has been around for lots and lots and lots of years, way before you, but they've decided to create a relationship with you to help you. So you feed it what it needs, and the gut as a result decides, okay, I'm going to help you with your hormones. I'm going to help you with your appetite. I'm going to help you in how you metabolize fat. I'm going to help you in how you live. I'm going to help you in your mood. So your gut literally is the driver for all of these processes, but it just wants you to feed it and treat it nicely. So because we don't, that's another unfortunate driver of our metabolic crisis that we are experiencing now. So when your gut is out of balance, everything suffers. So we now understand that the root cause of most chronic diseases now is a disrupted energy production and an imbalanced gut. They're not separate. They're linked reasons of why we're sick. So that sounds crazy because most doctors, when you go to them, they don't say, "Oh, how is your gut health?" or "Tell me, do you know how your body's producing energy? Let's check that." We learn to check on your symptoms. We use evidence-based medicine, and unfortunately, we just give you a medication to heal or to manage the end result. We don't ever really go upstream to figure out what the root cause is. So now that you know what the root cause is, that's actually great news because it means that it is reversible. Now you can go to the root cause and say, okay, how do we need to fix this issue? And so let's just go back to the drawing board for a little bit and talk about how your body makes energy and what does insulin have to do with it anyways. So many of you are aware of the word insulin, and we know that when someone has diabetes, they have a problem with their insulin, but a lot of people don't understand what the actual job of insulin is. And even if you do, you may not know why or if it matters if insulin is high or low. So the job of insulin, normally I would have something to draw upon, but just imagine with me that insulin is a bouncer at a club or the doorman in a company, and insulin is actually the one that determines after you eat your food whether the energy that you produce from your food goes into your cells because your body was not going to use the sugar directly. It transforms that sugar into energy, which is called ATP. And insulin is that key that unlocks the door for that sugar to go into your cells. So it is your body's primary, so it allows your body to make your body's primary fuel, which is ATP, and it uses the sugar from that you just ate. So in order for your body to even use energy or to make energy, it needs that doorman to work. It needs the bouncer to work to unlock the door. However, When that works perfectly, insulin works well, your energy is going from your food into your cells, you feel great, you're clear-headed, you're energized, you're balanced because your body is using energy, it's burning off energy. You take in energy, your body's using it and you're burning it off. However, when that process breaks down, then you're eating, but insulin is no longer allowing that energy to go into your cells. So you're being fed, you're feeding, you feel full, but your cells are actually starving. This is you're overnourished, but you have a lot of calories in your system, but you're undernourished, overfed and undernourished, and that is the epidemic that's happening right now. Is we are eating a lot of calories, but our cells are not getting those calories, and the calories that we're eating are not optimal anyways. But at least if our cells were able to use it, but it's not because insulin is no longer working. So why is it that insulin decides I don't want to work anymore? And the reason that is because we've overworked insulin. Over time, every time we eat, insulin gets released, which is very important because when your blood sugar goes up, insulin gets released from an organ called the pancreas, which allows your blood sugar to be shuffled into your cells where it is used, where it's needed. However, unfortunately, over time, our food, as I mentioned, has gotten progressively less nutritious and has a higher sugar content, higher carbohydrate content, more preservatives, more toxins, and therefore our insulin is going to have to work harder to help drive that sugar down in our food. Whether you're eating a waffle or rice, it all breaks down into glucose. And so your cells or your insulin is having to work harder. So your body pumps out more insulin, which is absolutely needed. However, your body can recover from that extra insulin that's being pumped out if it was just a one-time event or two-time in the year event or maybe three times a year. But our food is literally created for addiction. There are food scientists that make our food addictive on purpose to sell you more food. And so your food is now as addictive as some, substances that are considered illegal in this country. And therefore, you're surrounded by this food that's addictive everywhere you go. You cannot go to the store, you cannot go to the mall, you cannot go anywhere without being surrounded by processed food. And we mindlessly put that in our mouth every 2 to 3 hours. So now insulin, which used to work 2 to 3 times a year, a day, 50, 100 years ago, is now working 6, 7, 8, 12 times a day. We don't think about it because we think, oh, I'm just eating a small meal or I'm just snacking just a little bit. But every time you do that, insulin has to be released from the pancreas. Over time, just like you would if you overworked, insulin gets burnt out. And not only that, because insulin is being pumped out, pumped out, pumped out, the cells are really tired of hearing from insulin because imagine that insulin was a mailman and it had to go to your house every time it had a package and you lived on insulin or diabetesville and insulin had to go into your home every time a package came in, and normally you were okay with that happening 2 or 3 times a day, and then over the last few years you're now doing this 10 to 12 times a day. Imagine the mailman knocking at your door 10 to 12 times a day. Now you're tired, you're locking your door to the mailman. So then insulin gets very smart. It just brings more mailmen to really, really knock the door down. And so you have no choice because now the door is being knocked down. And so you have to open the door to insulin. That's insulin creating more, or the pancreas, excuse me, creating more insulin. Now, you really got tired of it. So you got a guard dog, right? You got a guard dog to avoid insulin coming in. And so insulin is now having to pump out, or the pancreas having to pump out more insulin to overcome the guard dog. And so now your insulin is rising and rising and rising to overcome the cell not wanting to let insulin open the door. And so over time, insulin gets really, really high, and the cells get really tired of hearing from insulin until, unfortunately, all of the sugar gets left outside, and that's when you get diagnosed with an illness, diabetes, prediabetes, high blood pressure, fatigue, you name it. And so that is the process, the disease process of insulin resistance. Funny enough, though, many people believe that insulin resistance means that they don't have enough insulin. And they wouldn't be wrong to believe that because half or maybe one third of diabetic type 2 take insulin. So about 33% of type 2 diabetics are on insulin, which doesn't make sense if your insulin is already high. And herein lies the problem with the modern healthcare system. They essentially treat the blood sugar because they see the blood sugar as the problem. Yes, it is problematic to have an elevated blood glucose. However, they ignore the fact that insulin is also elevated, and having high insulin is actually the root cause of this wheel of misfortune. So insulin resistance, now we know, is the root cause of so many diseases that we treated separately, with multiple different medications, when actually insulin resistance was the root of things like diabetes, as we know already. Certain cancers are metabolically related, PCOS, fatty liver, heart disease, high blood pressure, Alzheimer's, migraines, erectile dysfunction, neuropathy, obesity, and you name it. So insulin resistance, this is only a small amount of a list of the diseases that insulin resistance can cause. So it really does sit at the center of the most prevalent and devastating diseases now. And so addressing it at the root is not optional. Unfortunately, you'd be surprised, but many physicians were not taught this, so many physicians don't know this. So if a young lady came to her OBGYN and talked about PCOS and not being able to have children, she would be sent to a fertility clinic. When in actuality, if she addressed the root cause of insulin resistance, then she would address other issues that she has no idea is related to her infertility, but she would also address her issue of fertility. So essentially, the modern healthcare system addresses each of these diseases separately, not even healing those diseases, just managing it. So that's insulin. Now, what about our gut? Now, we talked about gut being the second brain, 100 trillion bacteria, and that gut bacteria has a certain food that it requires. So your gut microbiome is one of the most powerful regulators of your entire health. It does everything from breaking down your food to producing vitamins to regulating your immune system. There's 70% of your immune system lives in your gut, even your mood and your brain function. So 70 or 90%, actually, 70 to 90% of your hormone that helps you feel good, which is serotonin, is made in your gut. So you can imagine why there's an epidemic of chronic mood disorders, especially in children. So the balance of your gut matters. We have over 100 trillion bacteria. Not all of them are friendly. Some of them are bad bacteria, but unfortunately now we're going into an imbalance where a lot of the bad bacteria is predominant in our gut, not including fungi and parasites. So we know what our gut microbiome does, and it does even more than that. Besides fighting infections, it produces something called short chain fatty acids when you give it the food that it needs, and that helps protect the lining of your gut as well. And so the gut is extremely important. So what happens when the bad bacteria wins? You develop something called leaky gut, meaning that you're producing little tiny holes in your gut, and the bad stuff or the bacteria now leaks out into your bloodstream, causing chronic low-grade infections, which leads to chronic inflammation. And at times, that inflammation turns against its own self, producing autoimmune diseases and allergies. Right now, we're in allergy season, and people don't think allergies is an autoimmune disease, but it really is, even though it's very common. So the evidence is clear that gut imbalance and gut dysbiosis is at the root cause of many other diseases that no one ever thinks is related to the gut, such as multiple sclerosis, celiac, type 2 diabetes, SIBO, which is small intestinal bowel overgrowth, and mood disorders, as we discussed, like anxiety and depression. And we talked about all the autoimmune diseases, so lupus and Hashimoto's has to do with that. Even asthma. People don't think asthma is an autoimmune disease, but when your body is overreacting to very small pollutants or exercise or something that's not harmful, your lungs overreact to that. That is an autoimmune disease. And so gut is at the root of, as you can see, a lot of diseases. So between the gut and the energy imbalance, we now have the root cause of the most common diseases now. So then how do we move forward? It's very simple. We move forward by restoring our cellular energy. How do we do that? So we now know that insulin resistance is not having too little insulin, it's having too much insulin, but unfortunately, that insulin is resistant. It's not working the way it should. It's not allowing glucose to go into the cells. So then how do we restore our cellular energy? We restore insulin sensitivities so that our cells can produce clean, efficient fuel once again. And then we also balance the gut by giving the gut the food that it desires. Okay, the gut has a specific food, has a specific diet. And funny enough, we have good bacteria and we have bad bacteria in our gut, and they both have two different diets. And yet, 90% of the time, we're feeding the gut, the bad gut bacteria. But once you address those two things, you can eliminate the root conditions of the most common diseases. And so we have a big problem, but now I'm really, really excited to introduce you to the solution, which is the Feel Great system. And so we now know that our insulin is resistant because it's been working over time for many years, and now it's no longer, the cells are no longer responding. And so then we can go back to the drawing board and decide, okay, then how do we reverse that? Is the problem that we're eating every 2 to 3 hours and a food that we're eating super processed? Absolutely. So the way to reverse that is to not eat every 2 to 3 hours, to give your body a break from food so your insulin can finally take a few hours off. Our insulin is never off. It only has 8 hours of sleep off during the day and it works for 16 hours. So let's switch that. Let our insulin rest for 16 hours and allow our bodies to eat nutritious foods for 8 hours. And that is the lifestyle of intermittent fasting. However, a lot of people hear the word fasting and they want to run away because fasting sounds like a punishment for most people. And they're not wrong to think that because when you have insulin resistance, your body is not able to release fat, which is another source of fuel that your body can use for energy. Your body can actually use fat or sugar for energy, and it loves when it can use both, just like a hybrid car. We are hybrid cars, but none of us ever activate the fat burning mechanism of our bodies, but it's not our fault. When your insulin is high, it literally holds your fat in jail. High insulin, high fat. So someone who has insulin resistance, when they're not eating, they're going to feel like their blood sugar is dipping, and they would be correct. And that is why I love this solution because it addresses that particular issue. So the first product is called the Unamate, and it's produced from a company that has been seeing the writing on the wall for many years. They noticed that years ago our food industry has changed our food, and that's when we started to get sick. And they also noticed that there's this tea in South America called yerba mate that has revolutionized the health of the people that are using it in South America. They use it daily, all day long, and they have sustained energy. Their appetite is well controlled. They seem to get sick less. And so they studied this tea and they realized that this tea has even more nutrients, more phytochemicals, more chlorogenic acid than they could ever imagine. So they've sourced this tea, they've extracted it, they've purified it, and they've concentrated it into a beautiful, very, very easy to use sachet. And so one sachet of this tea contains the powerful amount of phytonutrients that you can find in hundreds of berries and apples and red wine and all of the food that has all of these phytochemicals and chlorogenic acid. And so the people, anyone who has an issue with insulin resistance, if you tell them now you can fast with the tea, they don't feel the sugar imbalance. Their sugar becomes more steady and balanced. Their mood improves as well as a result of the theobromine in the tea, and their food noise, their cravings is dampened due to the chlorogenic acid of the tea as well. The tea also contains properties that allow your own body's GLP to rise between 50 and 70% without medication. It's all natural. So the tea has helped so many people, and you're going to hear from some of them here that has allowed them to just sipping on it in the morning instead of breakfast, fast. And fasting is the key to long health But again, doing it with water or tea can be challenging if you already have a lot of insulin, if you have insulin resistance. So the first part of this has been revolutionized in for so many thousands of people around the world to allow them to fast for longer or at least 16 hours daily so that they can keep insulin low and they can solve the problem of constantly spiking their insulin throughout the day by snacking all the time. And so, what about when you do eat? We talked about 40 years ago, the food industry has unfortunately done something to our food so it can be more shelf stable. What did they do to our food? They removed the fiber. Fiber in food doesn't allow the food to last for weeks and months like they want it to because it's a humectant. It attracts fluid, right? And so they remove the fiber from our food. You can check anything with a bag or a box, and you'll see that there's very, very, very little fiber. Fiber is a complex carbohydrate, but it does not raise your blood sugar because the fiber is really for your gut. It's not for you. It goes through your digestive tract undigested and it bulks up your stool. It soaks up cholesterol, but it's also the food for your gut bacteria. Not all of your gut bacteria, the good gut bacteria, they thrive on fiber. And when you give them fiber, they produce short chain fatty acids. They heal you the lining of your gut. They produce the hormones that you need. They fight the pathogens for you. They improve and boost your mood. But the problem is that we're eating about 90% less fiber than our great grandparents did. They ate around 80 to 100 grams. We're eating about 10 to 12 grams of fiber a day, which is way less than what even the FDA recommends, which is about 25 grams for women and 38 grams for men. So we are fiber deficient, and that is the reason why we have that wheel of misfortune of diseases from IBS to Crohn's disease to depression and anxiety. So restoring the fiber daily is super important. However, how many of us are going to eat 13 cups of broccoli every day to restore that fiber? Because that is the equivalent of 28 grams of fiber. How many of us are going to have 280 carrots in order to restore that fiber every single day? Not saying it's impossible. My cousin does it. She's completely plant-based. But for most of us in the modern world, that is challenging because it's not what you do every once in a while. It's what you do on a daily basis. You don't have to be perfect, but you do have to be consistent. So the second part of this amazing protocol is the balance. And what this balance is consisting of is seven, excuse me, the balance is here, seven different types of fibers, plant fibers that your body desires, needs, and will use to thrive. And one packet of this will provide your body with all the fiber that you need. We always encourage you to eat healthy, but even if you had a bad meal day, your body is still getting the nutrients that it needs in order to heal itself. So the two combined, this two-part system combined with a intermittent fasting lifestyle is literally what has been at the helm of restoring the health for thousands and thousands of people, myself included. And at this time, so yes, the Fil-Grace system, you don't have to accept chronic disease as your fate. You don't have to accept stubborn weight gain or your life being managed by medications. The Fil-Grace system is a science-backed approach that is going to help you reclaim your energy, your gut health, and your life. Your body, I truly believe that it was designed to heal. When you give it the right tools, it will. Thank you so much, guys. I'm going to share my screen so I can share with you some testimonials. And before we do that, if you have any questions in between, please let me know. I don't know why it's doing this. These are just some testimonials that I got from the worded ones are the ones that I received from one of our science calls. We have science calls every week, but this one is it's acting up a little bit. But let's see if I can. Let's see. One second. Don't know why. We'll do this again. Okay. Ooh, I'm sorry, guys. A little technical difficulties. See if I can. And if anyone, maybe Dr. Tiffany, if you have your screen and you want to share it to do the testimonials, because for some reason this one is acting up a little bit.
Of
Let's see.
course.
I
I
think,
can I can pull that up, Dr. Natasha. I can.
thank you. It's frozen, but we can see if we
First
can.
of all, a great presentation.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. See if I
Well, I said I could, but
can. I know it's one of those things. Let's see if I can pull it up again that way. Hmm. Open with preview. And if we can do preview, let's see if it'll do that. Do I have to give you a co-host? You have co-host access, right? Or, hmm.
yes, I can share.
Okay, perfect. All right, I'll stop my share then.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Let's see.
It looks like, am I sharing now, Dr. Natasha?
Uh, are
No.
you? I don't see it now. No.
Okay.
Thank you. So while we're working on that, since we have Keith ready, he's here. I don't know if you wanted to introduce him, Dr. Tiffany. Oh, you're sharing. You are. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, great, great, great. I'm glad everybody was on the call. And, I started with Dr. Dieter because he's usually one I have sitting on here because when I'm joining this call, he's the one that's been speaking, not our lovely Natasha, Dr. Natasha. But Dr. Dieter's story is awesome, right? I mean, that picture on the left, pretty much, he was doing intermittent fasting and running. So many people are like, I'm doing all the great things. Why do I need these products? Well, shoot, after 2 months, look at the after. And then the LDL improving and the total cholesterol. Those are the markers that are actually what's taking us out of here. So I'm going to say, yeah, these products are actually adding what we're missing. And even when we think we're doing everything right. This is another one of my members who pretty much was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes as a teenager and thought he would have to have this thing for life, thought he would have to lose his foot like his aunt, his uncle. And he started using the products and actually was able to get off his metformin and insulin. Actually, I need to add that on here too, as well as losing actually 105 pounds now. And then Richard, someone who was struggling with gout, was already on the highest doses of Ozempic, was having issues of heart failure, and just really thought that, his life was not going to get any better. And he started using the products, and after a couple months, he was able to lose weight. But the bigger thing that was actually huge for his quality of life is now he was able to, because he couldn't even make a fist because of his gout. Even something as simple as getting up on the Christmas tree and putting decorations on, he could do. And now he's planning a trip to climb and be active. We actually were in the Spartan race together. That's what's important about these products. One of my other people who swore she was the healthiest person I knew. And, she actually came to a presentation and I was talking about, how 93% of us are actually struggling with metabolic health. And she said, oh, wait a minute, that's not me. I'm the 7% that's healthy. And we were talking about skin tags as one of the symptoms. And she said, okay, now I do have skin tags now. So she wanted to prove me wrong. So she started taking these products. And then after 6 weeks, you see from May 2nd to June 24th, those skin tags have improved. And yeah, that's my picture. And my friend was joking me today because in that first picture, I still thought I was cute. Okay. But it's not about being cute, right? You can be cute at any size. It's about decreasing that visceral fat. It's about decreasing your cardiovascular risks. I was able to get off of blood pressure medicine, able to get off of my antidepressants. I was able to stop having hot flashes. If I have any ladies on this call who understand that, that is a feat all by itself. And the migraines. How about that? Not having those either. I love Tanya's picture here because she was somebody dealing with type 2 diabetes with an A1C of 10 to 5.6 and was able to get off her diabetes meds, blood pressure meds, but she was carrying around an oxygen tank for 24/7 for 17 years. Okay. Now, that's not an issue anymore. And if that does not make you excited about what we're talking about, I don't know what I have to tell you. Jackie lost 104 pounds, but is keeping it off. We have so many people that are doing things like surgeries or doing those weight loss injections, and they aren't able to keep the weight off. There is something about having these things that we add to our lifestyle. When you add them to your lifestyle, you can actually keep this stuff off and keep these changes. And it doesn't matter how old you are. So at 73, she was able to get off of her medications, her diabetes medications that she was on for 23 years. and Cody. And so a lot of people are like, okay, when I lose all this weight, am I going to have all that skin flapping around? Cody was able to lose about 50 pounds, and you don't see that skin flapping. When you utilize fasting, you can actually tighten up that skin. So you don't have to pay all those thousands of dollars for skin surgeries, right? And then even acne. So there's inflammation that causes this stuff like acne. We can actually see this get better. This is just after 6 months of doing a feel great system, and this is a teenager. How many teenagers are plagued with acne and skin issues and feel like they have no answer and the medications they're using aren't working? And all they have to drink is a tea and fiber and the A1C going from 14 to 5.9. Row, somebody in healthcare who understood how awful this was when your A1C is this high. And so she actually had her labs drawn and her machine wouldn't go above 14. And they were going to give her the starter pack, as she likes to say, of medications to get her numbers down. And she said, no, I'm going to do these products, and was able to get them down to a 5.9. And Natasha, I can keep going. I really can. I know I have Keith in here somewhere since Keith's on this call too, but I have somebody else I wanted to share. But Crystal, she's a nurse who was on 15 medications actually, and actually had problems with her gut, leaky gut symptoms from all that inflammation and things leaking out with the gut. And as far as Hashimoto's, she was able to get her thyroid antibodies down from like 2000s to less than 8. Okay, that's not really heard of. She was able to get off 13 medications. Okay, now I know I have Keith in here somewhere, but and I'll pull him back up while I'm trying to get Pastor James, if you don't mind, Dr. Natasha. Is that okay?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Tiffany, for sharing these incredible, incredible stories. And I love that Dr. Tiffany didn't only share stories about weight loss or, diabetes, because a lot of people assume that these are weight loss, this is a weight loss program or a supplement, or it's only for diabetes. And that's what a lot of people assume, that insulin resistance means diabetes. As you can see, it affects even acne. And I know a lot of people who are quote unquote healthy, but they suffer from nodular acne, cystic acne. What about autoimmune diseases? We don't learn in medical school that those are reversible. And so that's
Mm-hmm.
what's so incredible about this, is that this is addressing the root of so many other things that even we're learning is associated with something similar. And so that is a
Yes.
huge hope for us all. And so thank you, Keith. I know that we want to hear from someone live, that whose life was literally saved by this. And so, Keith, it is on to you now. Thank you so much for being on, and we'd love to hear your story.
Thank you, Dr.
Oh,
Natasha. Thank you, Dr. Tiffany, as
yeah.
always. So, yeah, I was diagnosed type 2 diabetic 25 years ago. Well, 26 years ago now. And like Roe, my A1C just read above higher than 14. And I spent 25 years trying to get that to come down, and the lowest I ever got it was 7.5. Um, And in 2018, I was diagnosed with Guillain-Barré, which is an autoimmune disorder that destroys your nervous system, and it left me unable to walk. And when and after that, I had obviously foot wounds and um, all over below my knees. That one eventually in 2024, well, last January, they found it in 24 in November. And in January of last year, I physically, it went septic and it took my life. Um, and when I came to and came out and got out of the hospital again, I was unable to walk. I was 285 pounds, and you know, I almost left my daughter and new grandson without a dad or a grandpa. And I I told myself I was going to do something. I had to do something. I didn't know what it was. And I came across this protocol and started taking it the June of last year. And my results, I know, are a little bit incredible. That foot wound I dealt with for 6 months. through hyperbaric chamber, $180,000 there, wound vacs, knee scooters, and um, it never went away. It got a little bit better, but it never went away. And I started the protocol, like I said, in June, and within 3 months, that foot, you couldn't even tell there was ever a wound on it. Um, I'm back up walking. My inflammation is down. On day number two, I was off 108 units of insulin per day. And in 2 weeks, I wasn't depressed anymore. I had a better outlook out for a future. And within the first 2 months, I was off 14 of my 15 medication a day. I was down like 65 pounds and 8 inches on my waist. And at the end of right before I hit my 90 days, I set up all my doctor's visits because I don't know if you know this, when you die, you get a lot of them. And I was seeing two and three doctors a week for seems like forever. And every one of them, my cardiologist was amazed. She took me off my last pill, which was my Carvedilol for high blood pressure. Um, my eye doctor hadn't seen my eyes look this good in over 4 years. My eyesight has actually improved. My A1C has gone from a 7.5 to just as of last week, it's now a flat 5. Um, so I'm no longer type 2 diabetic. I've been on it now for, oh gosh, going on 8 months. I'm down just short of 100 pounds, 15 inches on my waist. I've got more energy than I've had in seems like forever. And I finally get to look forward to growing old and getting to spend time with my grandson and my daughter because I truly didn't think I would be here to experience it. And it has truly changed. It saved my life. I know where I would be if it wasn't for this system.
That is awesome. That is so awesome, Keith. I never tire of hearing that. I'm sorry, Natasha. I started talking. But I never tire of hearing Keith's story.
Me neither. And I never tire of saying it to as many people as would listen, and people are always amazed at a miracle
Hmm.
that you are. Thank you.
Yes, yes. Now I did have Pastor James, and so I had to get him to come on here. So I'd love to be able to let him share. And so you should be able to unmute Pastor James to jump on and share your story. Because again, another perspective. We just see type 2 diabetes. It's nice to see, okay, look, there's other things. There's the sleep apnea. I mean, yes, the weight gain helps with that, but you can have sleep apnea improve without you having to lose weight too. But go ahead and share with us, Pastor James. I'm gonna get you to unmute again.
All right, how's everybody?
Good, good.
Okay, where do I start? I guess the reason I asked that is because it's actually the protocol has done actually 12 things for me, and I'm
Wow.
still counting. First of all, I had checkup with my doctor, and she put me on blood pressure meds after was her third admonition for me to get on the blood pressure meds. And because previously I would say to her, well, doctor, let me see if I can't lose weight and try to work it out that way. And every time I go back to the doctor, I weighed more than I did when I was there the last time. Okay, this particular time I decided to go ahead on and get the medications and got the medications, took them home, put them in my medicine cabinet. And from that time to now, which has been over a year, the meds are still there. I never opened them. Never took one. Went back to the doctor 3 months later, and the doctor realized from my labs that my blood pressure had come down, my A1C level had come down. I had lost over 50 pounds in about 3.5 months. And
Wow.
when the doctor found that out, she began to ask questions as to what was I doing. in order to make my numbers better. I told her what it was gladly, and my wife goes to the same doctor. After about 2 weeks later, my wife went to the doctor and she began to ask her the same questions because her labs were looking better as well. And make a long story short, after the doctor found out what it was, our doctor started ordering the product, which
Wow.
spoke volumes to us. So, what has happened to me since I got on the protocol? Um, Also, with the weight loss, skin tags has began to dissipate. Sleep apnea. I had sleep apnea and I messed around one night and forgot to put my mask on. Woke up the next morning, told my wife I forgot to put it on. But then I realized that I wasn't tired. I wasn't fatigued, and the sleep apnea that I had was so bad until I could drive up to a red light and fall asleep.
Mm.
So when I realized that was no longer happening, I began to understand that the sleep apnea was gone. I never donned the mask since I forgot to put it on that particular night. Also, gout. I was on allopurinol, the meds, and gout was a wicked, of course, kind of disease. But I then began to realize that after being on vacation and I was eating things that I knew I wasn't supposed to eat, I realized that the gout was not flaring up, and I began to celebrate. Well, lo and behold, the day that I began to celebrate, the gout started to flare up again, but it was
Mm.
mild. It was very mild. So I began to sip on the protocol, and lo and behold, it went away. So I then realized that the product was actually helping me in that area. So I don't take any medications for gout anymore, and the gout has stopped flaring. So I thank God for that. I had problems with sciatic nerve issues, and that has gone away. I had inflammation in various parts of my body. Inflammation seems to be a thing of the past. Brain fog. As a minister, of course, I use the manuscript to write my notes out on, but I'm beginning to realize now that I don't have to utilize the manuscript as much while I'm going through the process because it's coming back to my remembrance. I'm recalling the things that I've studied. I'm able to regurgitate those things without having to per se go to the manuscript. So I say to pastors or any speakers that this is good because it helps in the area of brain fog. I had acid reflux, that's gone. My complexion is starting to clear up. Scalp irritations dissipating. And lo and behold, I also had hot flashes. You know, we hear the women talking about hot flashes all the time, but I'll tell you, it doesn't only happen to women, but it happens to men also. But now I can say that I'm happy to tell you that the hot flashes are gone. That's it.
That's it. I love it. I love it. That's it when he says all those things. What do you say to that, Dr. Natasha? He had his whole list going. He came ready. That's what I'm talking about.
I mean, he's saving lives in all of the ways. He's saving souls, he's saving lives, and the hot flashes. I never heard a man say they had a hot flash, but now, now I know that I can say that James reversed his hot flashes. James, you are a breath of fresh air. Thank
Yes,
you so
yes,
much.
yes. Love it, love it, love it.
Wow, thank you so much, Keith. Thank you, James. Thank you, Dr. Tiffany. You all are absolutely amazing. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, your stories, your lived experiences. And I wanted to open the few minutes that we have left for any questions. There were a couple in the chat. I do believe that we went around and started to answer them, but just in case some of you have not seen the answer, someone did ask about type 1 diabetes. And I did mention that, or I didn't mention to those to the group, but type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disease where the pancreas is not producing enough insulin. So it is somewhat of the opposite problem of type 2 diabetes. However, because type 1 diabetics also live in the modern society that we live in, they sometimes can develop something called double diabetes, wherein they're having to give themselves more insulin injections, which eventually leads to insulin resistance of their insulin injections. And so some type 1 diabetics also deal with some of the chronic health issues that type 2 diabetics deal with as well. So there's been lots and lots of wonderful testimonials of type 1 diabetics having to use way less insulin and improving a lot of their chronic inflammation and chronic health issues. So it's absolutely useful for that as well. So thank you for asking that, Alan. Someone did ask about caffeine free, and there's a couple of flavors that are not caffeine free. One of them is mint chocolate, which I love, especially for nighttime as like your alternative hot chocolate. Still has all the antioxidants, the theobromine, the chlorogenic acid, but it comes in a beautiful, nice new flavor. And there's also natural lemon in caffeine free for those of you who are caffeine sensitive. Any other questions before we have Let's see, Eagle. Yes, easiest and the best decision I ever did. Thank you, Keith. Awesome. Thank you so much. Anyone else have any other questions? And this is recorded. And so, for any of you who are interested in sharing this for those who need it, please reach back to the person who invited you to the call. And how do you get this product? How do you get this? The great news is that it is when you do go back to the person who invited you to the call, you will receive their discount code. And so you'll pay just about $5 a day. I was at an event today and ice cream was like $7. And so when you realize how much you save when you use a protocol that reduces your cravings and your food noise, you actually save a lot of money. So please go back to the person who invited you to the call so that you can get their link and so that they will be able to guide you. We have lots and lots of resources. We have calls like this almost every day of the week now that is available to anyone who's interested. Thank you. So if a friend of mine would like to know whether there is caffeine free, yes, there is, Rosemary. There are two caffeine free versions that are available now. Any
Yeah,
other?
and someone looks like they asked how much caffeine is in the product. Uh, I mean, since that's coming from a yerba mate leaf and there's natural caffeine in that, you're looking at like a premium cup of coffee. Of course, there's going to be some variation because it's coming from an actual leaf, so it's not crafted. But that's about as much caffeine as in the caffeinated version. Mhm.
And it doesn't have the same effects. Even before we got the decaffeinated versions, those who are caffeine sensitive, they did not have the same jitteriness effect as regular caffeine. Because the way that it's produced, it reduces those effects. The theobromine also helps with that as well. And so definitely try the regular version, but if you're really caffeine sensitive, there are two options for you. Can a
Mhm.
dialysis patient take this product? Yes, they can. Of course, they would have to confer with their nephrologist to make sure that their fluid is in balance. But there have been people who at least have had chronic kidney disease stage 4 that have been on this product. And so maybe Dr. Tiffany can speak more to it for dialysis, but it is something that you definitely want to work with your nephrologist with.
Yeah, you do, because there's some fluid restriction. So it's about how much is your fluid restriction. But we do have people that have been able to improve their chronic kidney disease, just like you were saying, Dr. Natasha. You just have to work with your provider.
Absolutely. So now that we're at 8:01, unless anyone has any other pressing questions, we're going to end the live. And I wasn't sure if Dr. Tiffany, you wanted to say any last words for anyone who's considering maybe is on the fence. We'd love to hear.
Oh, sure. Oh, sure. Okay. Well, one, you're actually on this live because I'm assuming someone cared that much about you to invite you on this call. Meaning they cared about whether or not you're here today or gone tomorrow. So, being a woman whose father passed when after their third stroke 20 years ago, I no longer want that for anyone I care about. I no longer want that for my enemies. How about that? I don't want to walk into a hospital room again with somebody with tubes in their nose or a tube down their throat and having to be brought back to life like Keith or having those ulcers like Keith. I don't want that. Somebody falling asleep at the wheel of a car. I mean, that could have been a car accident. He could no longer have been with us, Pastor James. And so these are real stories. These are real people. So if you know anyone with these real stories and you've listened to this call, this presentation that Dr. Natasha, I mean, so eloquently put together and explained it so well, I hope you feel a duty to share because that's exactly what I feel. This mission is serious for me. I no longer want to keep prescribing medications. I no longer want to just see people on pills. I want to see people getting their lives back. And the great thing about these products, it is turning the clock on that. And so if that is something you are interested in finding out for yourself, reach out to the person that invited you on this call If it is someone that you know and you want to see them and actually see them better, reach out to the person who invited you on this call because we have a way to help you join us on our mission. We are doing this and we're going to be on tomorrow night. I have a call on Wednesday night. We have a call on Tuesday night. We are serious about this mission and we just need people who understand it to want to come join us and get their lives back.
Woo! I cannot follow that close, Dr. Tiffany. You did it. I can feel your passion. I can feel your energy. We want you to join us. Dr. Tiffany is one of the main reasons why I was very, when I saw this, this mission, I saw Dr. Tiffany, I'm like, I'm her, she's me, she understands. And so as you can see, there are more and more medical providers, but you don't have to be one. Keith isn't a medical provider, James is not a medical provider, but they're saving lives by sharing their story. They say we're saved by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. Our testimony is what saves lives. And so thank you so much for being on the call. Like I said, we have an opportunity for you to join us every day of the week if you'd like. And we'll see you on the next one. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.